Hello, everybody, and welcome back to ESI For All, the Esports Insider podcast, where we aim to shine a light on the diverse people and organizations that make up the gaming and esports industry. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of speaking to Robin Gray, the co-founder of Gray Jones Media, the home to Gayming Magazine, the world's only LGBTQ video game magazine. How are you doing today, Robin?
I'm good, Riley. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not bad, thank you. It's snowing here.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
if we need a bit of weather update really quickly, we're okay in Birmingham at the moment, but apparently it's rolling in tonight. So.
Yeah, it literally only started. It snowed last night and it started about half an hour ago here. But yeah, it's still warmer than we were in Newcastle.
Yes.
Me and Robin have spoken at a few events together before, and the last time we saw each other was at Discover Esports in Newcastle, which was an excellent event, but Newcastle is very cold.
A fantastic event hosted in a fridge.
Yes, yeah. If you see any pictures from Discover Esports, you'll see that we're all wearing our coats on stage whilst talking. So we were actually on a panel about LGBTQ plus issues in esports there as well. So that's when we had a chat and was like, I got to get you on the podcast. Let's have a talk about it. So tell me about Gayming Magazine.
So, you did the introduction for us. So Gayming Magazine has been going for, starting in 2019, 4 years this year.
Wow.
And so it was born out of an idea down a pub, as is all good ideas. And somebody said that the growth of kind of LGBTQ representation in video games is out there. There's a wealth of queer gamers that have been out there for donkey's years, and yet there's no place for them to coalesce. And we kind of took it upon ourselves as a media company. So my company, Gray Jones Media, we own a number of other LGBTQ websites, magazines we call them, that all push into niches within the LGBTQ community. So whether it's bears, over 40, diverse travelers. And so for us, it was a very simple decision to sort of go, actually, yeah, this is a really underrepresented group. And that fits in our wheelhouse as a company very nicely. So we then sort of launching forwards, then that was in February 2019. We launched in Pride Month, June 2019. To an amazing sort of fanfare, and now fast forward nearly 4 years, we're reaching over 1.5 million people a month all around the world. And I think something that's really important for us as well is some of those emerging regions as well of representation out in Asia, which is fantastic to see as well, with the growth of LGBTQ representation, particularly in Japan and East Asia. And along the way, we picked up a couple of things that come alongside it, which for us was really important and helped us on our journey with representation, which were the Gayming Awards, which launched in 2021. And we're now into our third year of the Gayming Awards this year. Year one was completely virtual due to the ongoing global pandemic. Year two was hybrid, so we had a presence in London and was broadcast online. That was watched by 320,000 people live, which was fantastic. And year three now, we're jumping over the pond and we're debuting on Broadway.
Oh, I'm so excited. That is
so a sentence incredible that I honestly didn't think I'd say out loud anytime soon. But we have an absolutely fantastic venue that is literally more on Broadway than some Broadway theaters. We are literally a block, a stone's throw from Times Square.
I love that.
So yeah, and that's we're moving into sort of like those bigger circles, and I think that is testament to not only our success but also the importance and the love that both the industry and the fans have kind of bestowed upon us as a demonstration of how well we've been representing the community. And gaming's mission has always been about a celebratory mission. It's always been about celebrating successes. I think that too often sometimes we can get a little bit stuck in what I call hand wringing, and I think we don't take the wins when we have them. And I think as well, I always have to be careful with this part. um, there are a lot of award shows in the games industry that have a diversity quota or have a diversity category that's kind of like this is our doing good category, this is our kind of special category.
Yeah.
And trying to wrap up the significant contribution to the global games industry by any kind of underrepresented or minority group in one award is tokenistic at best.
Yeah.
And I think that for us, that was kind of where we set out to go, okay, we can do this. We can create, we've got 12 categories in the Gaming Awards. And it celebrates all facets from contributions in the industry to streamers, to content creators, and then in-game stuff about kind of character representation, authentic representation, and indie games. So it's kind of, there are multiple different facets. There's the being able to bury deeper down into that celebration of LGBTQ contribution to all of that success. And of course, esports has its category in there as well.
Yes, yeah, excited about
And
that. We were talking about that in Newcastle, so I'm really, really happy to see esports getting its light shone on it, especially when it comes to talking about the LGBTQ plus community, because it's a big part of esports, and it doesn't nearly get touched on enough. So
absolutely, and I think that's something that we set out. So it's a year, the first couple of years of us running Gayming Magazine, gaming was very much focused on video gaming. That was the kind of core programming, if you will, of the magazine, because that's what we set out to do. And in those first couple of years, we had some great successes working with Xbox, working with other other industry bodies, other big companies, be it through some of our activations around DigiPride or whether it's just ad hoc contributions to the industry in a positive way, and also elements where we've held a mirror up to the industry to go, no, this isn't good enough. And then a couple of years ago, I think it was, we decided to sort of break out of our core programming and go after and push into kind of other gaming and non-gaming areas, so esports being one of them, where I think somebody, I don't think it was yourself, I think someone else said it, but basically said, you've done such a great job with affecting actual change in the games industry, come and do it with esports.
yeah, we
So
need it.
I took that as a personal challenge to sort of go and do that. And already we're working with some fantastic names, doing some fantastic work, and challenging people where needed, and celebrating, because there is change in the esports world, and I think that's something that needs celebrating, because the more that can be held up as a success, the more other companies can go, hold on a second, you can do that and be financially successful.
That's one of the things that we talked about in Newcastle as well, was like, it's not all doom and gloom. Let's not try and,
Yeah,
because
no,
obviously
absolutely.
Discovery Esports was like entrance to
Yeah,
esports. We didn't want to be like, it's
no,
horrible here. We wanted to
absolutely.
make
And
sure that we shine a light on the fact that there is incredible change happening in the esports industry.
and like the games industry, and I think that's kind of like what gaming set out to do for the games industry, is we weren't out there to kind of just slam it. We weren't out there to ignore it and just talk about random fluff, although we do excellent random fluff, such as a fantastic journalistic piece bemoaning the loss of Nightwing's bubble butt in the latest game. That was
Rest in peace.
fantastic leading journalism.
No,
I
that's
await
top notch. Yeah,
I await many
absolutely.
awards. But that was but alongside that, the success, the celebrating success, and I think that was, we spoke to some companies very early in our days where they wanted to sort of talk about how their ERG groups are doing great work internally, but they didn't want to appear too gauche. And I said, no, you have to be out there flying the flag. You have to say these things, because as someone that, or as other people, I'm got a good job, thank you. But as other people might want to enter the industry, they're going to be Googling, like, is this company great for LGBTQ employees? If it's proven that one of those companies has been doing a charity fundraiser for Pride for the last 5 years, and raised tons of money, then that's a great way of sort of putting that statement out there as saying, yes, this is a good company to work for.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, what is your personal history with esports?
My okay, my personal history with esports is slim. I will be honest, but it's been one of discovery, and it's been one of very interesting discovery, because it's. I think I was probably part of that quite large swathe of people that initially was quite um dismissive perhaps of esports, in a sense, of sort of going, I don't get this. But I think the second that I really started to plug into it, um the second that I realized that watching people play a game is no different from watching people play a physical game, and that to me was something that the second that penny dropped in my head, I was fully on board. I was watching some fantastic stuff. I'm quite a big fighting game sort of person, so obviously being able to really kind of vibe with that, but also then discovering then we had a fantastic representation in that world with the likes of Sonic Fox. To
Love
me was
Sonic
kind of,
Fox.
yeah, and I think it's that kind of their unabashed proudness, and an ability to sort of like really shout it from the rooftops, um, is matched with success. Like they're not just some random person. That they're a world beater,
Hmm.
and they have to be listened to and they have to be respected. And I think having them lead the charge in that space has been vastly important to all of this as well. So I think, yeah, my introduction to esports was quite gentle, but I think since then, I'm been plugging into it a lot more.
Hmm.
But I will give a shout out really quickly to Chris Kissack and Sally, who did discover esports, because actually for someone like me that's still a little bit wet behind the ears in certain places, having an event like that was actually really important. And I think people
100%,
could take a lesson
100%.
from that, in a sense that, and this applies across the board. It's not just an esports thing. I think it's any industry, but an industry that can get a bit carried away with itself, having an event that really takes it back to basics, really kind of does kind of events esports 101.
We can get a bit gatekeepy as well. Like,
Absolutely. And
mhm.
I know for a fact that me sitting here on an esports related podcast saying that I wasn't a massive fan of esports, probably a few people have already turned off and is writing me some tweets or something. So I think it's
We don't
kind of
get that many viewers, Robin. It's okay.
Well, okay.
I haven't had any haters yet, so
I was trying to be supportive. But I think for me it's kind of, I know that can rankle some people. And I know that sort of saying like, oh, I don't watch that much esports, and like, well, what are you doing in this space then? And it's just like, well, I do like it. I do get the idea of it. I'm just not a massive sports person all round, you can tell. So it's kind of, for me, it's something that, yeah, it's a sort of, I suppose, loop back around on the question. It's a new thing for me, but
Mhm.
I think it's something that I think has great power, um, that it needs to use carefully.
Definitely, definitely. Like we're in the very unique stance of being new, and people will get mad at me for saying that as well. But it is new. It's
It is new.
the past 20 years. Like that's new in
Yeah.
comparison to traditional sports when you look at that. So at the moment, I've said this in a past podcasts before, but the rules for esports aren't set in stone.
Yeah.
Like there's still wiggle room. There's still bending room. There's still the ability to create it into something that is inclusive and welcoming of everyone. And I personally don't watch esports, but I work in esports. Esports is, sometimes people get a bit like gatekeepy around the fact that you have to watch esports or you have to play esports to be a part of the community. And that's just not true. There's so many different ways that you can get involved in esports. Obviously, mine is more on the community side of
Mm-hmm.
things and more like the EDI diversity side of things. But like, yeah, I mean, I was new to esports before I worked at ESI, essentially. Like I had some experience working with the Newell, and I did games journalism at uni, which dabbled in esports.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's new to everyone. Like
It is.
yeah.
But you know what's really fascinating is that like the video game world as a whole, what's new is also very old, because the
Mm-hmm.
concept of esports has been around since year dot. And it only took me until a couple of years ago to actually realize that one of the very first winners of an esports competition, it wasn't called esports at the time, granted, it was the Space Invaders Championship, I believe, was a trans person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of, you kind of track that that thread that similarly applies in the wider games industry, that thread of the influence and the role that LGBTQ people have played going way back. Becky Heineman is her name, who can be considered to be one of the first competitive video game winners.
Oh,
Back
100%.
in 1980 something or other. And there are other kind of obviously headlines all the way through that. I quite like my LGBT history, video game history sort of thing. We did a good talk on it last year. But yeah, so it's what's new is also old, and there's a real big footprint from the queer community in there along the way. Similarly with women as well.
Yeah, and that leads on to a question that I have, which was, how do you think the representation of LGBTQ plus individuals in esports compares to other aspects of the games industry?
I feel I've always sort of said this out loud, which is I think the esports industry is possibly a few years behind the video game industry, and the video game industry is a few years behind the entertainment industry as a whole. So I do think esports is kind of towards the back of the queue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that to sort of go back on what you said about the rules haven't been set for esports, I think the lack of some kind of I know there's a few bodies that are that are sort of competing at the moment to be the body of esports, but because there isn't any much regulation out there, that kind of has to do the enforcement side. There are specific examples of representation that are done well. The problem is, I think at the moment is there's more examples of representation done bad,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's down to money. And I think that's what is regulating the esports industry at the moment is money,
Definitely.
and money is going to go where money goes. And until it's all well and good sort of saying like that diversity is coming through, and there's sort of all these wonderful examples, but realistically, until a big sponsor turns around and goes, no, we're not going to provide a massive chunk of cash to your team or event or whatever until you sort out these issues, it's sort of pushing water uphill a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And when you look at where the money is coming into
Well, there is
esports
that
at
as
the
well.
moment,
That's
it's
that
not a
comes with its
massive
own set of
priority.
challenges.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That does come with its own set of challenges, and alongside that, where the competitions are being played,
Mm-hmm.
that are automatically ruling out the
A large
attendance.
portion of the audience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they physically can't set foot in the country,
Yeah.
despite any protection, any kind of guarantees of protection they may or may not be afforded.
Yeah.
That they just can't.
Can't risk it.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
so I think to answer your question, I think there's good work being done, and I think there's strong examples coming up through the likes of Valorant with their game changers. That there are strong examples of all of that sort of thing. Ironically, there's actually more examples of representation being done in the games themselves rather than the wider competitive industry.
Yeah.
So Apex, for example, fantastic example of representation that is baked into the game. Overwatch, good representation if you read the kind of surrounding story, but
Yeah.
not so much in the game itself.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other examples that I can't think of immediately. But if you sort of scratch into all of that, and we have those sort of highlights, that there's wonderful people that are starting to kind of come up. I know that Xset has signed. Oh, my brain's just gone dead. Xset signed a fantastic LGBT player. I think it's Ewok. That recently. Obviously, we mentioned Sonic Fox already. So that in the player space, there's fantastic representation. Our current reigning Gaming Awards Esports contribution, LGBTQ contribution to Esports Award, is Captain Fluke,
Oh, I
who
love
has been an
Emmy.
absolute trailblazer.
Yeah. Emmy's incredible.
In trans representation by literally transitioning on camera,
Mm-hmm.
and having to kind of live that experience, but being a beacon out there to other people. So it's all there. The saddest part, and I think it's a historical thing, but I think we have to always be looking at history and be careful not to repeat history. When I first set up gaming, I actually Googled LGBTQ esports professionals. There's a list on Wikipedia, and there was quite a few of them are marked as deceased, and quite a few of them were marked as deceased due to suicide.
Yeah.
And that's a problem, obviously.
That's a massive problem, for,
and it's something that
all trans people, all people in the LGBTQ plus community. When unfortunately you look at the statistics of suicide in comparison to the general population, something needs to be done.
And I think general population as a whole, LGBTQ general population as a whole. But if you then start taking the percentages of just that list, it's quite high, and that you can never put two and two together. But the industry, as it was, or as it still is in certain parts, is not supporting its players and is not supporting its staff. And I think that is something that intrinsically has to change in the right direction. And in an ideal world, if there was a FIFA for football, if there was an RFU for rugby, if there was some kind of global body that could be able to sort of start to instigate regulate some of this change, that would be perfect. In lieu of that, but understanding as well that one of those bodies is currently headed up by various countries that don't like us anyway, then we don't really hold out too much hope of affecting too much change in that space. So that it comes back again to what I said about sponsors. It comes back to the likes of those big sponsors to actually make a stand. Put some of that pride energy that you come out with in June. Put some of that pride energy into really starting to say, we want to do some real change here.
Don't just change your Twitter logos. Do something. We've talked about this before as well.
And don't change your Twitter logos in only countries that are palatable to change your Twitter logos in.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things as well, like more and more countries are starting to recognize esports as a valid career path, as a valid sport, as something that they want to back. So I definitely think we're going to be seeing more and more sort of like governmental involvement, whether or not that's going to be a great thing or a bad thing. Like you said, with like just picking the token number of people to fit like the quota for diverse people, like whether or not like the government will introduce that and it'll create more of a problem of just selecting people because you have to. I think it definitely has to be an issue of caring, like just be a decent person. I think
there has to be duty of I think there has to be duty of care, and I do think as well there has to be, and this is going to be tricky, and I appreciate this in advance, and I'm probably going to get screamed at by 1,000 people, but that there is an issue in my brain about a duty of care to younger players and to younger competitors. That the notion that a 14-year-old can get a professional contract that's worth millions, and they just get burnt up, spat out, and they move on to the next poor kid. That's a problem, and it's a problem both ways, because it's a problem about that kid as a person, but it's also a problem going outside, because there has been examples over the past 12 months where teams have had to cut a troublesome player because they've been caught using racist or homophobic language in chat. And I'm not excusing that in any shape or form, but equally, if there isn't the education pathway, realistically, they don't know any better. You've just thrown $1 million at a 15-year-old and you've given no education. You've literally
not
just
taught them about the world at all.
No, you've literally just grabbed them and go, right, you're now a millionaire, go and play some video games. They think they're bulletproof, and they'll just carry on chatting in chat. I was about to say something rude. They'll just keep chatting in chat. And I think that's so again, human beings have to be human beings, but there has to be a duty of care to the people that you're employing. So I worry a lot about that. And I know that, again, with good regulation in other major sports, there are regulations based around ages of people. And I think that's the issue, is that I think other sports, and I know esports has like mid-tier, but I know it's the mid-tier that really suffers, because it's got a great collegiate setup, it's got a great top-tier setup, but it's that mid-tier. Actually, there's some really good stories of good, diverse programs and education programs coming out of that middle tier, but nobody really bothers, because the big boys just reach down into the collegiates and go, right, you're up here now. And that bit in the middle is skipped. Whereas if you look at football or rugby or cricket or anything else, that pathway is so important to a player's education, because they get media training along the way. They get just brought up in a much more respectful way, personally.
And a lot of times they have to have quote unquote real jobs in order to support their esports as well. And that's a different experience that you get. Like,
it teaches them to be a human being rather
exactly.
than rather than hiding in mum's spare bedroom kind of
thing. Until they can buy their own mansion. Like, there has to be a step in between, for sure. But like, also what you were saying about supporting and making sure that support network is there. It's the same goes for when a game, like you said, like Apex, like Overwatch, like Valorant, that releases like trans characters or gay characters. It's like, but then they do nothing to support the trans and the gay people that are joining their community. Obviously, Valorant's been really good at that, and I'm not going to just write off all the other ones that have done it, but there needs to be let's get the list out. But there needs to be some sort of moderation, some sort of management, in order that when you get this influx of diverse people into your community, there's a support system there, because you can't just bring them in and then open them up to all the hate and all the negativity that they'll get from the rest of the industry.
Absolutely. And that's actually really important. It's something I know we touched on in Newcastle, which is the games you mentioned are they're a mixed bag of whether they sort of stand by it or not. And doing it for doing its sake, dumping it out there and go, right, we have some trans characters. We then, as Gayming Magazine, go and say, hey, this game's got a trans character. All our readers go flocking over there. They're all going, oh my God, this is amazing. And then they're playing it and they're being hunted and shot down because you're the trans character. And the community managers and the game production people and everyone else is going nah in the background, because they've hit their headlines, they've done their thing, and they're fine with that. So it's kind of it's, if you're going to produce something, stand by it and make sure that you are ready with a good and diverse community team that actually understands what it is you've just done.
Mm-hmm. And that's another thing as well, like you said, if you're going to have community managers that are going to be dealing with issues surrounding LGBTQ plus issues, then hire LGBTQ plus community managers who better to support somebody than somebody that's in the community with them. And that's also the same thing goes for all internal esports, like marketing people, social media people, events managers, tournament operators. Like, hire diverse, because they know how to deal with these issues and they know how to tackle them, and they know how to create a space that they feel welcomed in, therefore will welcome other people like them,
and also can be proactive in that space as well. Because I think that we've seen plenty of examples. The wonderful memes that fly around in the LGBTQ community as we approach Pride Month of, here we go again. We see way too much of that, of the sort of the pandering, the getting things wrong, we're only going to put rainbows on certain countries' localized Twitter accounts. If you employ diverse people, you will just make good diversity. You will just do good things. I had to twist that out my usual catchphrase, which is, if you employ diverse people, you make diverse games, because we're talking about something slightly different. But the point still stands. If you, to your point, yes, you can be reactive and make sure that the people in there to help support. But the flip side of that, I think, is if you actually have some diverse people in your staff to start off with, the decisions that you make, the choices that you make, the Pride activations that you do, the other activations, dare I say, all around the year that you could do as well, can be done with more authenticity. If you can't afford to hire people permanently, just go and seek some consultants. There are wonderful organizations out there that will do that for you and provide guidance, not least ourselves. But also there's other fantastic people. Glad, I know, has worked on a few video games recently, and done good results out of the back of that as well.
Yeah, the last guest on the podcast was Alexander Nathan, who does Permastunned Gaming, which is an all-disabled esports organization. And when I spoke to him about how can we improve the accessibility of games and esports titles, his response was, hire disabled people to help you make the game. Like it's
quite literally. It's funny that, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you actually, because I think reacting to things being prepared for something that you've already chosen to do is one thing, but actually, if you have somebody on board or people, multiple on board while you're kind of coming up with these concepts, you're going to avoid some of those pitfalls that you might have fallen into.
Definitely. And so how can allies in the esports community support and advocate for LGBTQ plus community members?
Well, I think it's what we were just talking about. I think it's a case of support us and give us space. And I think be open to some of that change. I know that industries in general are always a little bit kind of hesitant about, it's the woke agendas coming in. It's like, no, we just want to play games.
Just want to be with the friends. Yeah.
We'd like to hang out. And I think that it is a case of listening, learning, just providing some space. We're not weirdos, most of us.
Speak for yourself, Robin. I'm definitely a weirdo.
Yeah, I try. And I think that I think it's a case of giving space. It's listening. It's opportunities like this. It's ways like up in more panels at conferences that are not just this is our diversity panel, that we're going to set the entire world right on diversity issues for the entirety of time in 45 minutes with a bit of Q&A.
Yeah.
And I think it's bits like that. And I think it's making sure that your panels are diverse. It's making sure that you've got people from different backgrounds. It doesn't have to be a diversity panel. Just have diverse people on all panels to be able to share their personal understandings. Higher diversity. But going back on allies as well, listen and react to what you're being told. Don't go out and do a survey and then sort of feel good about yourself saying, oh, good, we did a survey, but we're still going to go and do this. Listen to the results of that survey. Listen to the results of your staff that hopefully you've hired. Yeah,
that's incredible. I think we touched on some really cool topics there. Let's talk about the Gayming Awards.
Absolutely.
How excited are you?
Scale of 1 to 10, I'm going for about a 9 at the moment because there's a lot.
How stressed are you?
That's about 12. So no, it's really exciting. I'd love to be able to say a date, and I almost said it out loud by accident. But we are confirming a date in a couple of weeks' time. It's mid-April. I can say that bit. It's obviously live in New York. We've got a fantastic venue that has some wonderful LGBTQ history, actually, as being an old speakeasy for theatricals pre-legalization of being gay. So everyone just used to go and hang out down in the basement, having come off stage at the local theaters. Who'd have thought? And yeah, we've got Julia Hardy returning as host. She's did a fantastic job last year and is going to continue to do a fantastic job this year. We are obviously still broadcasting live, so you can tune in at twitch.tv/Gayming Mag. IGN also supporting as well, so we're going to be across all the IGN outlets. I mean, and we obviously have our nominee list that is already available, which you can go and check out at GaymingAwards.com, GAYMING awards.com, which includes all the wonderful nominees that are out there, but specifically for the best LGBTQ contribution to esports award this year, we got a really great mix of people, some of which we've actually already talked about. So we have the Chicago Metropolitan Sports Association, which is a fantastic grassroots esports association based in Chicago, but actually has a wider reach, mostly around the US, but also around the world, of LGBTQ people coming together to play a variety of different esports games. We have Team Overture, which is a wonderful, diverse Twitch team that very much focuses on esport content creation and some really good charity work that they've done. Obviously, Valorant Game Changers, we mentioned already. They set out to do, obviously, their focus has been around women, but they also include female identifying and non-binary people built into that as well. So that they're great representation of that.
Yeah, we had Ashley on the podcast for episode 2. So
wonderful.
If you want to find out more about Game Changers, watch episode 2. It's very good.
So do that thing. But then also we slight sidebar. I had a conversation once where somebody, I think they were trying to gotcha me, but they asked me about my opinions on having kind of like women only esports spaces. Shouldn't it be equal? Shouldn't it be this, that, and the other? And it's like, as soon as you put more women on the main roster, then absolutely we don't need that. Until then, we'll
It's a
stick
stepping stone.
it's a stepping stone. It's demonstrations. It's sort of demonstration. Look at the success that's come through in women's football over the last 12 months, and the way that's now elevated to filling stadiums and stuff. So anyway, slight aside, and also we have Exet, and Exet have been doing some fantastic work up in the Boston area and around the world, obviously through their representation with their team. So they're the 4 nominees. We have a dedicated esports panel of judges. A couple of people I've already mentioned actually through this podcast that are judging that, and
that also proves that there's not enough representation in the community. If like, we've talked about these people before,
literally,
there's not many more to talk about.
the standard set of names has come up. But no, some great representation from different parts of the esports world. A couple of casters, obviously one of which we have mentioned the name of. One of our writers, our deputy editor, who's esports focused, and also someone who works in the industry as a doctor. So there's kind of like some nice grassroots built into that as well. So
I love that.
Yeah, so that's the Gaming Awards. Again, gamingawards.com, and something to look forward to.
Really, really excited. I'm going to try and get there. I will try and get there, but
come over.
Well, Sam, let me go. This is me pleading to my boss to let me go.
Sam, just listen to the podcast.
This is also a good test to see if my boss listens to the podcast. So.
Yeah, Sam, if you don't reply to this, if you don't tell Riley she's not going, then I'm
going. Yeah.
So it's the action point now is on you to tell Riley that she's not going.
Yes.
Otherwise, we've said it officially now, she's coming.
I am coming. So, but no, super excited. I mean, even if I can't make it, I will definitely be watching on Twitch. Very excited. And do you have any plans to expand more into esports with gaming?
Yeah, so there's a few bits that have been sort of flapping around in my head. We've developed really good partnerships with some. Our charity partner this year is Stream for a Cause. They do some fantastic grassroots charity fundraising work. Part of that is through content creation through esports. So more work there to be done. We've got some potential exciting stuff coming down the pipeline. We're building esports into some of our big activations this year. So we had DigiPride coming up in May, June, July this year. We did do some esports, some light esports in last year's DigiPride. We're going to focus that into maybe a weekend of esports that's kind of going to gather together all the kind of, hopefully not all, but that also might explain the lack of representation as well. But a lot of LGBTQ esportsy people can come together for that. There's some other talk of wonderful things happening as well. And then we've got Gaming Live, which is taking place in late September. And again, there's going to be a really significant sort of esports contribution to that. But going forward, 24, 25, I can't say too much, but there are thoughts, processes out there, how we can start to get more involved, have more influence, maybe organize some things of our own that would keep the rainbow flag flying around in the esports industry.
So watch this space then.
Watch this space.
Incredible. Okay, so I'm going to move on to a couple of recurring segments that I've got in the podcast. Just something a little fun. So the first one is 2 truths and a lie. Right. I'll be telling you 2 truths and a lie about LGBTQ plus esports and gaming, and I need you to guess which one is the lie. Okay.
Oh God, you're going to find me out.
Okay.
This is me now being a fraud.
So number 1.
Yes.
The LGBTQ plus community is more likely to play games on the PC compared to the general population. Number 2, 38% of LGBTQ plus players have experienced harassment while gaming compared to 18% of non-LGBTQ plus players. Mm-hmm. And number 3, 70% of LGBTQ plus players reported they would like to see more diverse representation in esports titles.
I think that's all. I think they're all true. Sadly, I think the lie is the harassment, because I think that's significantly higher. Whereas I think that I know it would stand to good sense that LGBTQ people play more on PC because that's where all the indie games are, and people love the queer indie games. And the last one that I've just forgotten sort of rang sense as well. So I'm probably going to go for the middle one.
The middle one is true.
Oh.
The lie is 70% of LGBTQ plus players reported they'd like to see more diverse representation. The statistic is actually 90%.
Yeah. I thought those statistics were quite low. So I think it was between... I knew the PC one was actually true because I'd written about that previously. But that doesn't surprise me. It's PC and Switch that come out. PC and Switch come out the highest with...
especially
because that's where indie games are.
You told me at Newcastle something I'd never heard before, which was that people in the LGBTQ plus community spend more money on gaming than the general population.
So, we actually use that as part of one of our sales pitches. But Nielsen did a study a couple of years ago that basically, it's a significant chunk of cash as well on a monthly basis. LGBTQ people spend more on video games. They're more likely to own a gaming system, full stop. And they're more likely to be purchasing peripherals all around than straight counterparts.
Super interesting to me. But the details of that one statistic. So 48% of the LGBTQ plus community PC game and the general population is 39%. So quite a difference as well.
Absolutely. And again, that's the effect of indie games telling authentic LGBTQ stories.
And the last thing, what 3 items would you take to a deserted island with you?
Oh, it would have to be my Switch because I've got to play some Lego games. That's just how I survive. Food. I've got to take food, but that's not really the point.
Well, no, we'll assume there's food on the island.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we're not talking real survival. That's good.
No,
be terrible.
You'll survive without these 3
I'd probably die immediately. Switch. It's going to sound all techie and boring, but it's going to be Switch. It's going to be tablet to watch my shows because I can't miss my shows. And I think. If I said my boyfriend, that's disgusting. So I'm not going to say that.
I think your cat would be upset if you didn't say your cat. So.
Yeah, I better say the cat.
She's texting me right now, and she's like, "I can't believe."
She's not. She's asleep down here. I'm having to talk loudly to save her snoring. Okay. Cat, Switch, and tablet. Like I'm too techie to exist in the wild. I'm not a wild person.
That's fine. I mean, Joni from Wiggy said gummy bears. So
actually, that's a good shout. That's probably Bourbon biscuits. Actually, you know what? I'm going to sack the cat off.
Sack the cat off for Bourbon biscuits. Yeah, that's fair enough.
Bourbon biscuits. It's going to be Bourbon biscuits, tablet, and Switch. Nice.
Okay, well that's great. I'm sure you'll have a great time. Your tickets have been booked.
Much change, to be honest with you.
I want to say just a massive thank you for coming on and talking to me. It has been incredible, and as always, we always get to cover some interesting topics together. And this won't be the last time me and you speak together on a panel because there's a lack of representation in the esports industry.
I'll see you at the next event.
I'll see you at the next one on the Pride panel. Yeah.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, and thank you for having me, and thank you to obviously ESI for doing the Lord's work in sort of driving forward representation as well, and obviously you doing that.
Me, no, I am doing the Lord's work. It's me.
Sod ESI. Thank you to Riley.
Sam's not watching this. We've already
established that. I'll see you in New York.
I'll see you in New York. Where can people find you and gaming?
Yeah, so Gayming Mag, Gayming Mag, is basically every social handle we've got, including Hive, if that's still a thing, if we're preparing for the demise of Twitch. Also, Twitter, Freudian slip. Twitch is fine.
Twitch is fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, Elon hasn't got to that point yet. So
you can't afford to.
No, I shouldn't take delight in that. Yeah, so Gayming Mag at basically everywhere. GaymingMag.com, the website. Twitter for me at that Robin Gray, ROBINGRAY. LinkedIn, Robin Gray.
Incredible. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you everybody for watching. I will see you on the next one.
Goodbye.